there's a strategy here. All
Okay.
set? Like to call the meeting to order at 7:10. Be advised that this is being taped for television. And Sandy, could you give us roll call, please?
Yes, we have Alyssa Hurd, Mary Taggart, Jim Smith, Joe Liggett, Kenny Baptiste, Sandy Slavin, Associate Rob Lesson, and Agent Dave Pichette.
Thank you.
Just that we've all been, those that were due were appointed at the Selectmen's meeting last night, so please go to the Selectmen's office to get your papers and then go downstairs and be sworn in at the clerk's office for those that are due for reappointments.
Okay. Okay, everybody get that?
Yeah.
I just
Ready?
did this a year ago.
Notice,
No, not yet. We can't start that.
that's right.
Did anybody get a chance to look over the minutes for April 19th?
Yeah, I did. I think it was, the one that was presented first
Oh, yeah,
had
I'm
one
good for
little
another 2 years.
miswording. It didn't
last
say
had one.
redo something, it just said, I would have to look at exactly where it is if you give it to me, but there's one area, yeah.
So it's just a typo?
Hmm?
Just a typo, basically?
It's basically a typo.
Unless it was a typo on the
It's just a
computer.
typo, right. Maybe it was.
It might have been correct.
Might have already been corrected.
Maybe it just was corrected.
Did you find it?
No, it might have been something that might have been a typo in the computer, but might have been caught.
I do have, I've read both of them, and I would like October 19th to be corrected. I think Mark Caboni was an associate at the time, and there is no mention of Donald Rogers as being absent. If you noticed on the April 9th, 2017, all that was accounted for, but not on the October 9, 2016.
Okay, well, we'll send that one back.
But I make a motion to accept the April 19th, 2017 minutes as presented.
Second.
Okay,
I read that one.
Sandy's motion, Jim's second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. October 19th, we're going to send back to have it.
To find out, to correct the position of Mark Caboni and to add Donald Rogers as being absent.
Okay, you got that, David? Okay, we have a bill for legal ads for Church of the Pines hearing, $40.
Make a motion, we approve payment of the Wareham Week $40 invoice.
Sandy's motion,
Second.
second by Lisa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. That should be all right, right? I gotta sign this. You wanna,
Start the hearings.
okay. Elisa, can we do the first hearing, please?
Sure. Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, June 21st, 2017, at 7:15 p.m. on the request for determination of applicability for Leah Abbott, 63 Oak Street, Wareham, Massachusetts, 02571, to repair, replace a foundation and footings for property located on Assessor's Map 39, Lot T43, 63 Oak Street, Wareham, Massachusetts.
Anybody here for that?
I spoke to Leah, she's on her way here, but she was about 10 minutes late.
Table it.
I make a motion, we table?
Second.
Okay, Sandy's motion to table it, seconded by Elisa. All those in favor?
Right here.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, we'll wait for on that one. Could you read the next one, please?
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaws, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, June 21st, 2017, at 7:15 p.m. on the request for determination of applicability for Wetlands, Wildlands Trust and Wareham Land Trust, 675 Long Pond Road, Plymouth, Mass. 02360, to create a trail for property located on Assessor's Map 54, 55, 55, 55, and 57, lots 1002, 1010, 1009, 1011, and 1004, 0 Nicholas Drive, Wareham, Massachusetts.
Have a seat and identify yourself, please. Please talk into the mics.
Hi, I'm Eric Boyer. I'm the property manager at Wildlands Trust, and I'm the applicant for the project, but I would like to introduce Leah Howard. She's a Mass Lift AmeriCorps member placed at Buzzards Bay, and this has been one of her projects during her year of service with Buzzards Bay Coalition, and she's been the lead on the project for the past year.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, David's going to highlight, and then we'll go from there. Do you have your green cards, your abutter notifications cards? Uh-oh.
RDA, oh.
Yeah, part of the requirements, you do have to notify the abutters by certified mail.
I do not have that then, I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, we'll go through the project, but we would have to continue the
Okay.
discussion until the next meeting. Again, this project site is at 0 Nicholas Drive, and it encompasses various lots. This application is submitted as a joint application, again, between the Wildlands Trust and the Wareham Land Trust, for the creation of a nature trail system on existing conservation properties in the Marks Cove area. The work would be done within the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland, partially within wetland, and within a coastal flood zone. Most of this proposed trail network is utilizing existing trails. There are some sections of new trail that would have to be created to complete the proposed trail network. There's also a section of bog boards to be installed to create a slightly elevated walking surface through a wet portion of the site for over this particular trail. This would be approximately 75 feet in length, and the bog boards would be supported on 4x6 posts.
The Bob Wood, yeah. Proposed.
Again, the majority of the system is existing trails that would just be enhanced and pruned back. There are also a couple of proposed viewing spots to overlook the marsh area. There will be a split rail fence that would be installed at the edge of the overlook to keep hikers from traversing out into the marsh. A portion of new trail that was proposed was closer to the wetland than what was depicted on the plan, so I had requested that this portion of the trail be relocated so that it was at least 30 feet away from the edge of the wetland. So that was the only issue I had. I was fine with the project, reviewed the trail system, and think it's a great project. But without the abutter notifications, I would have to, at this time, just recommend a continuance for that purpose.
Okay, you have anything to add? Would you like to say more?
So the purpose of the trail is to provide the community of Wareham in southeastern Massachusetts opportunity to walk in nature and get to enjoy the salt marsh views, pine barren landscape. There's a retired cranberry bogs. There's also a natural cranberry bog on the property as well. And it's a great opportunity for organizations like Wildlands Trust, Wareham Land Trust, Buzzards Bay Coalition, Mass Audubon to take people out onto the trail and do education programs. So there's a lot of benefit to this trail system, and get to have people enjoy nature and learn about different aspects of the environment and want to go out and protect it as well.
This guy's gonna tie in over here, right away.
Okay.
Doesn't sound like you,
No, it's out in the audience.
but it's not gonna. Next.
Can you set it to vibrate, maybe? Please? Okay, any questions?
No. No.
Rob?
No.
Jim? Sandy?
Yes, I thought I knew most of the trails in town, but how do I get onto this property?
So this, the trail access is at the end of Nicholas Drive. I'd have to look at the map to actually tell you which road, but it's a series of roads that are off of Route 6 through a housing or several years of housing developments.
You come in off of
Cremisa.
Cremisa Road, and
Yeah.
you go into Terry Lane, I believe it is, on the left in that housing development that's been there for quite some time. And at the back of that is a relatively newer subdivision called Nicholas Drive, and you drive into there. And
Okay.
at the end of the road, that's where you would access
But there's
the trail.
another site. The Wareham Land Trust, the two at the very bottom, are those the two that we do the?
Yep.
Yes.
I was gonna say, we do the
Review.
surveys?
Yeah.
Yes, the. The what? Yes, those are the ones we monitor, Joe and I, okay, so that gives me a hint as to where those are. Then the Wareham, so this new trail is being proposed to go across that Wareham Land Trust property.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm done.
Okay.
I have no questions. Looks good.
Mary?
Question?
Lisa?
No.
No? Anybody in the audience? Okay. Wish the board.
What's the next meeting date?
July 5th.
That's right, too. Yeah, we gotta continue it. No green
I
cards.
make a motion, we continue to July 5th pending the receipt of the butter cards.
Sandy's motion,
Second.
second by Alicia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Opposed? Abstention? Okay, next one. Huh?
Notice of
Thank you.
Notice of public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass. On Wednesday, June 21st, 2017, at 7:15 p.m. on the request for determination of applicability for Robert and Pamela Bulis, care of GAF Engineering, Inc., 266 Main Street, Wareham, Mass. 02571, to construct a single-family dwelling for property located on Assessor's Map 54, lots P3 and 22LC, 5 Preservation Lane, Wareham, Mass.
I got 'em mixed up, so.
Yeah, that's the one we're holding on to.
Good evening, Bill Madden from GAF Engineering.
The project site is at 5 Preservation Lane in the Cremisa area, and the project involves the construction in a coastal flood zone. A 30 by 56-foot dwelling with attached 24 by 36-foot garage is proposed within flood zone AE elevation 16. This project would require pretty extensive filling to be done on this site. There would be approximately 6 to 7 feet of fill that would be needed at the deepest points to achieve the grades shown on the plan. So I did have a question in terms of a rough amount of yards of fill that would be needed for the site. The project would also have a septic system in town water. All the proposed work would be outside of the buffer zone to any other wetland resource areas. So I only had a question on the amount of fill, but other than that, I would recommend the approval of the project with a negative number 2 determination.
Can you shed some light on that, Bill?
Yeah, with the fill, there's about 1,000 yards of fill that will be required to achieve the finished grades that are noted on the plans.
Okay, David?
It's a lot.
There's a lot of fill, but, anything else, Bill?
No, that's, it's pretty straightforward. It's fill within the AE zone. It's a permitted amount. I mean, the fill is permitted, and the fill is there to accommodate the construction of the single-family dwelling, the driveway, the access to the house, and the Title V sanitary system.
Okay. Rob?
No.
Jim? Sandy?
I'm all set, thank you.
No question.
Jim? Joe? Mary?
No question.
Elisa?
No.
Anybody in the audience? Okay, wish the board.
I make a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All right, Sandy's motion, Elisa's second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Further motion?
I make a motion, we grant a -2 for this project.
Second.
Sandy's motion, seconded by Jim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. I'd like to take Leah Abbott back off the table.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Motion for that?
I'll take a motion, we untable Leah Abbott's hearing.
Thank you, Sandy's motion.
Yeah.
Joe's second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. What'd she do? She sit down?
She sat in the seats.
You can come up and sit at the table. That way there, if you say anything, it'll get picked up by the microphone. You just identify yourself for the record, that's all.
Is it working?
Yeah. Can you identify yourself?
I'm Leah Abbott, 63 Oak Street, Wareham.
Thank you. David?
So again, the project is at 63 Oak Street, and the project involves repairing a portion of the existing foundation of this cottage, and this is in the buffer zone to a coastal beach and a coastal bank. This is an after-the-fact filing for the work that has already taken place. The front wall of the foundation which is the side closest to the street, was replaced with a new concrete block foundation. The work required excavating down to install the new footing and installing the new block foundation wall. And again, the work was limited to just that front section of the wall. There was no adverse impact to any resource areas. This was an issue that the building inspector looked at and felt needed to be addressed immediately, so that's why the work was done ahead of time. So I would recommend the issuance of a negative determination number 2 for the project.
Okay, you have anything else to say?
No.
Okay, questions? Rob?
No.
Jim?
No.
Sandy?
None, thank you.
Joe?
I visited that one, it was kind of an emergency.
Okay. Mary?
No question.
Lisa?
Are you going to be doing any more work on the house on the foundation?
I don't know, I think I have to call in a structural engineer to see what really needs to be done further, because I'd like to start renovations on the house.
Did look like maybe you'd have to have some more work
It was a
done.
mess.
You can use your front stairs now, right?
Yes.
Anybody in the audience? No?
Make a motion to close the hearing?
Sandy's motion,
Second.
second by Lisa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Further motion?
And make a motion, we grant the project with a -2.
Second.
Motion by Sandy, seconded by Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Thank
That
you.
was seconded by Alyssa.
Oh, I'm sorry. It sounded like you said it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I would correct myself. It was seconded by Alicia.
My voice didn't change that much.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, it did.
Okay, the next one, please.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass. On Wednesday, June 21st, at 2017, at 7:15 p.m. on the request for determination of applicability for Robert Aaron, care of New England Clean Energy, 43 Broad Street, A408, Hudson, Mass. 01749, to install pole mount solar arrays with panels for property located on Assessors Map 4, Lot G, 32 Robin Wood Road, Wareham, Mass.
Okay. You're the homeowner.
The homeowner, he's the
I'm the
contractor.
contractor.
Okay, your name's just for,
Ben Fitzer.
And I'm Robert Aaron.
thank you.
My home is 32 Robinwood Road.
All right, David will highlight, and
There's the green cards.
you have the butter notification.
I don't, I forgot to bring it with me, but I could bring it in on Monday. But I have all of them. I have the signed, the things are stapled to each, to each resident. That's within 200 feet. I got the list from the town hall here. They
Okay.
emailed it to me.
Okay, we will hear it, but we can't, we'll have to continue it
Okay. Yeah, said.
till those cards.
70 miles to come here, so I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay,
much for
so
the
the project
pictures.
site is at 32 Robinwood Road, and the project involves the installation of solar panels, and this is within a coastal flood zone. Ground-mounted solar panels are to be installed within a coastal velocity zone at this property. The ground-mounted panels would be mounted on poles anchored by helical screw anchors. There's no excavation that would be needed for this. These will be
Yeah, but these are
drilled
like
into the
ground
existing
These are the-
yard area. There will also be some minor trench work to connect the panels to the dwelling. The site is relatively flat. There's no work proposed within the buffer zone to any other resource areas. And there will also be some panels placed on the existing home and the garage, but the actual work on the ground involves the installation of those 3 anchor poles for the ground-mounted solar arrays. So I did not have a problem with the project, but at this point would recommend a continuance for the abutter notifications.
You have anything you'd like to say?
Present it to you.
I mean, could we bring the abutter notifications on Monday or tomorrow, so we can continue?
It'd have to be the next meeting.
It'd have to be the next meeting, on July 5th,
Mm-hmm.
correct? And that's when you will give us approval to
That's
build?
when you vote on the right.
That's when you vote?
It's not like an issue that is, public is really gonna be interested in. I had a few people.
No, but the rules, it's the way the rules are.
I follow
Yeah.
it, I understand that.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with it, it's my own fault.
Okay.
Okay. Questions?
Personal curiosity, what's its output?
What's its output? It's, so it'll be 360 watt panels, so you're producing just over 22,000 kilowatt hours a year.
Thank you.
Jim?
I have nothing.
Sandy?
It's a good power.
You need the 45 additional panels
house.
because what's on the garage and the home are not sufficient?
Correct, to cover the yearly load of his home there.
Is it a year-round home or a summer home?
I use it year-round.
You use it year-round? I can't tell by these pictures where in the yard these poles will be mounted.
Here, I have color pictures for you.
Oh, good.
I have copies of them.
Oh.
So you have an array on the roof, an array there, and then 3 pole mounts with 15 panels apiece.
Can we have
And
it
we have
colored?
it set up on.
Yeah, I'll pass it down in a minute.
He said he has 5.
I have no questions, Ken. No questions.
Will these be rotating with the sun, or are they just fixed?
They're fixed poles.
Thank you.
They're set back enough so we're not worried about a velocity, storm washing them away?
Well, no, they're definitely in the velocity zone. If there's a storm, they're gonna get hit, so they have to be built to a certain standard, I would imagine, relative to the
Yeah,
building
for the
inspector.
engineering, that'll be
picture
submitted
color.
with the building permit. For the, I believe it's, for the coastal wind load there.
15 miles an hour, you said.
Yeah, 115 mile an hour, I believe, is the wind load at that area.
Will the items on the roof also be able to
It's a very
sustain
small
that
amount, yes.
wind?
Yes, of course, we pass everything to a structural engineer who will take into
I
consideration.
just expected to see these panels flying as the wind's picked up, so I'm
Yeah.
just,
All right.
I'm asking.
I selected these people because they have a mount that, a single pole that goes up and that they can put 15 panels on each pole. They have 3 poles that takes care of 45 panels. We needed 10 more, so 10 more on the roof.
Yep.
But no one else had these posts that I could find.
Okay. Alicia?
I'm done, thank you.
How high are they? The edge of your solar panel, how high up is it
The highest level?
from the ground?
Ground.
So the poles are,
The poles are from, I mean, the bottom of the array or the
From the
top
bottom
of the array?
I
panel.
want to know
To the
how
top of the
high
panels.
the array is.
It's about,
16 feet?
yeah, it's 16, depends on the grade, but it'd be
From the
between
grade.
13 and 15 feet there.
The panels are
The next to last,
panels are
the
located
next to
between
last
the
page in the
carriage house and
document.
the main house.
Okay.
So it's, the best we could do to, come down the driveway, not looking into the back of a bunch of panels.
Next page,
Okay.
next to last. There's your dimensions of the arrays.
Mary, any questions?
No.
No? You all set, Alicia? Joe, you all set? Anybody in the public? Okay.
Now, they only need the green cards. Do they both have to appear at the next meeting?
No,
Or can they send the green cards in ahead of time?
yes, they can do that.
So if they send the green cards to you, we can continue the hearing without either of those gentlemen being here? I'm
You
trying
won't
to
have
save
to
you a
drive
trip
down.
from Framingham.
That would be awesome.
The only thing I suggest is, it's always wise to have somebody here, because if somebody does show up and nobody's here to answer a question, we might have to continue the hearing again. So
Somebody's gotta be
we
here.
prefer not
If it
to.
isn't me, it has to be him.
Yeah.
Okay, I make a motion, we continue the hearing until July 5th pending receipt of the green cards.
Okay, Sandy's motion,
Second.
seconded by Alicia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Well, we need copies, more copies for the
No.
next meeting. You guys keep them on file for us?
No, we should be all set there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Notice of public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in the room 320 Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass. On Wednesday, June 21st, 2017, at 7:15 p.m. On the notice of intent for Atlantic Concrete Construction, Inc., care of J.C. Engineering, Inc., 2854 Cranberry Highway, East Wareham, Mass. 02538, for the repair of an existing concrete seawall for property located on Assessor's Map 3, Lot 1007, 24 Fisherman Cove Road, Wareham, Mass.
This is her pier, and the building was stone
I
wall.
don't have to undo
She's
all of
worried
this
that it's
stuff.
very close to her pier, building the stone wall. Erosion?
Hi, can you identify yourselves for the record, please?
Jeff Hallahan, owner, 24 Fisherman Cove Road.
Thank you.
John Chakrin, owner, Atlantic Concrete.
Thank you. David will highlight.
So again, the project is at 24 Fisherman's Cove Road, and the project involves repairs to an existing seawall along a coastal bank and within a coastal flood zone. Repairs are proposed to the existing concrete seawall, which is approximately 100 feet in length. The face of the existing wall is deteriorating, and the work involves pouring a new face on the wall, which would be approximately a foot thick to help solidify it. The wall sits above existing riprap at the base of the slope. Forms would be put in place, and the concrete would be pumped in to create the new face of the wall. There would be no excavation needed for this, just doweling into the existing wall. Also, there would be no alteration to the existing riprap that exists there. No machinery would be needed to add the forms. That would be done primarily by handwork. The existing deck and stairs that exist there that go from the top of the slope down to the pier would be removed and replaced. The new stairs would be aluminum instead of wooden. And also, the existing fence that's on the top of the wall would be removed and replaced as well, and with new fencing. We did get a DEP file number for this project, so I would recommend the approval of the project with the standard conditions and the added condition that there be no machinery or materials on the beach during the project.
Anything you'd like to add?
No, yes, all we're doing is we're making sure we don't disrupt the coastal bank in that section. And that's why our methodology was excavate by hand and remove by hand and take off-site and dispose of.
Okay.
Did you say it was, the new face was a foot thick and the plans is 6 inches? Or was the foot the total after the fix?
No, the foot is gonna be the additional part, but it varies and
Yeah, whatever we take out, there's a spot that has lattice where it's, popping out.
Mm-hmm.
So, that'd probably be a foot 4 inches, 16 inches in all. So, you know, any part that is deteriorating will be removed.
So in other words, some areas are gonna be thicker than others as they
Sure.
go.
I was just wondering, the plan said new 6-inch thick, and you said a foot.
Had
Wondering-
nothing.
Jim?
Wondering why
No?
the discrepancy.
Sandy?
I missed
Yeah,
something.
8 max.
The concrete stairs are staying, but you said something wood was being replaced? I missed it. Sorry, Dave.
The wooden stairs are gonna be replaced
With-
with aluminum.
Aluminum.
Okay.
Where are the wooden stairs?
They're in the middle where the pier
They
comes
go out
out.
Well, I walked down them. I don't remember them being wooden.
It would.
They're wood?
It's noted on the plan as
Yeah, I-
existing landing,
Yes.
and then it goes down there, there's a few stairs there.
Existing concrete stairs to remain. Existing landing.
That's what's going to be replaced, the
Okay.
existing landing.
We were there this afternoon. We knocked and there was nobody at home.
I wasn't there.
No, you weren't. So we invited ourselves down to your stairs. Yes, that seawall looks a little tired. Yes.
As they say, where my daughter lives in England, it's very wonky.
The wanting, yes. You have a wanting wall. I have nothing else.
Joe? Question for you to Dave, would there be a need for a weep Sorry about that. Is there any need for weep holes on this wall, or?
There's really nothing like that now existing. There's,
It kind of looks like that might have what caused a lot of the damage besides age and brutal storms.
what do you think?
There were no weeps in it.
No.
Okay, and what I can see behind it, you know, we dug a couple of holes, is gravel, so it leaches through the bottom,
Okay,
through the revetment.
okay. No other questions?
Mary?
No question.
Lisa?
No?
Public? Can you come up to a mic and identify yourself then?
Yes, my name is Mark Wyman, 21 Fishman Cove Road, across the street. My mother owns a piece of property along the pathway and pier that you probably walk down to view the seawall. And basically, her only really concern about the project is something from the contractor in writing to the board or whatever, stating the, what's the word I'm looking for? Protection of the pier that is there. That, you know, protecting the stabilization of the pier. And that's her biggest issue.
You speak to that?
Well, we're not talking about my pier, we're talking about his pier.
Right, but it would say the wall abuts
The wall abuts it. What we planned on doing is just removing the part that abuts it and rebuild it into your pier.
I say that's her main concern, is the protection of the pier.
Yeah, we'll make sure that it's protected.
And she would just like something in writing that you're gonna,
We can do that.
You guys need green cards?
Yeah.
okay? Thank you
That
very
it?
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Wish of the board.
Make a motion to close the hearing?
Second.
Sandy's motion,
Second.
Elisa's second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I make a motion, we grant the project with the standard conditions with the stipulation that no machinery will be on the beach and that a notice will be sent to the abutter that there will be no deterioration of the existing pier.
Their existing pier.
They're existing.
Their existing pier that abuts your property.
Sandy's motion,
Second.
second by Mary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Get that out to you as soon as possible, okay?
And before you begin any work, see Dave and make sure all the paperwork is completed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Notice of public hearing. Pursuant to the
I'll bring it over there.
Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, June 21st, 2017, at 7:15 p.m. On the notice of intent for David Pillsbury, care of J.C. Engineering, Inc., 2854 Cranberry Highway, East Wareham, Massachusetts, 02538, to upgrade an existing septic system for property located on Assessors Map 119, Lot 1328, Shangri-La Boulevard, East Wareham, Mass.
Good evening, for the record, Mike Pimentel with JC Engineering.
Thank you. David?
The project site is at 28 Shangri-La Boulevard in the Shangri-La area, and the project involves upgrading a septic system in the buffer zone to Glen Charlie Pond. The existing system is to be replaced with a new Title V denitrification system. The new leach field would be installed up close to the road at the furthest point from the resource area, but it would still be within 100 feet of the edge of the pond because the lot's not big enough to have it be outside of the 100-foot. So it would be, as I said, approximately 75 feet from the edge of the pond. The new septic tank and pump chamber would be installed as shown on the plan. The property does have a significant slope to it. Hay bales would be installed between the work and the resource area. We do have a DEP file number for the project, so I would recommend the issuance of the order of conditions with the standard conditions for the project.
Anything to add?
Nope, David explained it thoroughly.
Rob?
I'm all set.
Jim? Sandy?
I'm set, thank you.
No questions?
Mary?
Set.
Alicia? Anybody in the audience?
Yes, that's the old one, that's the new one.
Okay.
I make a motion, we close the hearing.
Sandy's motion,
Second.
seconded by Jim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? For the motion?
I make a motion, we grant with the normal standard conditions.
Sandy's motion,
Second.
seconded by Mary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Excellent, have a good night. Thank you.
Okay.
You too.
Okay.
Okay, that's the public hearings and continued hearings. Anybody here for William Franklin Green Seal Environmental? They've requested a continuance.
I make a motion, we continue until July 5.
Okay, Sandy's motion,
Second.
seconded by Jim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
Okay, Church of the Pines.
My name's Joel Hartley. I'm representing Church of the Pines this evening.
Okay, thank you, David.
Okay, the project site is lot 1048 in Wareham. And the project involves the installation of a water line in the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland and to delineate a wetland boundary. A water line is to be installed within an existing woods road, approximately 75 feet from the edge of the wetland. There's approximately 150 feet of water line that would be installed in Wareham, with the remainder of the line that would extend over the town line into Carver. The work would involve trench work for the new line, and this would be backfilled at the end of each workday. The water line would be within the existing woods road. The wetland line was also reviewed and is accurate, so I would recommend the approval of the wetland delineation and a negative determination number 3 for the installation of the water line.
Anything to add?
No, sounds accurate.
Okay. Rob? No. No. Jim? Sandy?
Where's the church?
I have nothing, thank you.
Joe?
No questions.
Mary?
No question.
Elisa? Anybody in the audience? Motion?
Make a motion to close the hearing?
Second.
Sandy's motion, seconded by Jim, to close the hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Further motion?
I make a motion, we grant a -3 for the project.
Second.
Sandy's,
And to approve the wetland delineation.
And to approve the wetland delineation.
Sandy's motion, seconded by Mary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Continue notice of intent for Gary Buckmaster, Wareham Harbor Master Shellfish Department. Anybody here for that hearing? That's been requested to be continued till July 5th.
Make a motion, we can continue until July 5.
Second.
All right, Sandy's motion, seconded by Alicia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Frank Adrian, NOI Adrian Nanumet Shores Improvement Association. Anybody here for that? Okay.
He was just asking, we did get a request for a continuance on this for, till August 2nd.
You good with that, Bill?
Yes, Dave and I did speak about that earlier in the week, so August 2nd is the date we're looking toward to do.
Okay.
I make a motion, we continue the hearing until August 2.
Second.
Motion by Sandy, seconded by Alicia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Ronald and Lois Enos, 18 Burgess Point Reality Trust, care of GAF. I will be stepping out, and Sandy will be taking over the meeting for this hearing.
Thank you.
I'll go do some light reading.
Okay.
First and the third, right?
Hmm?
Our meeting's the first and the third
Yes.
Wednesday, right?
We got an access path.
No, we're set. Please come forward and identify yourselves.
I'm Bill Madden from GAF Engineering here on behalf of 18 Burgess Point Realty Trust.
Michael Kenefick, counsel for the trust.
Okay, Mr. Bichette?
So the project site is 18 Burgess Point Road, and this project has been filed under the Town of Wareham Wetlands Protective Bylaw only. There was a valid final order of conditions under the Wetlands Protection Act, but that order has since expired. The project involves the construction of a pathway within a bordering vegetated wetland, in the buffer zone to the wetland, and also within a coastal flood zone. A notice of intent states that the application is being filed to comply with a DEP enforcement order. I had talked to the engineer about this issue, and in my opinion, that isn't necessarily a reason why this is being filed. The application is being filed because the project is required to obtain a permit under the town's wetland bylaw. So I just wanted to make that clarification. So the project involves a 4-foot wide path, approximately 560 feet in length. It's proposed to provide access to the beach from Winship Ave. As the path does cross bordering vegetated wetland, approximately 1,185 square feet of wetland would be altered to complete the path. Several wetland replication areas totaling approximately 1,201 square feet are proposed. And the intent is to be able to run golf cart type vehicles over the path to access the beach area.
Why do they have to run golf carts?
The applicant does not propose any surface for the path or any elevated structure for this project. Root systems of the plants would not be removed as part of the path construction. The plan shows a turning area in the existing mowed field area at the coastal end of the path. The applicant is requesting a waiver to do work in the 30-foot no-activity zone based on the recently amended wetland bylaw. The amendment states that the commission shall waive or reduce the no-activity zone to the extent necessary to provide reasonable shoreline access if there is no other means of access available. We had opened this hearing and then continued the hearing as the abutter notifications were sent out incorrectly, stating that the application was a notice of resource area delineation, but it was actually a notice of intent. And also referenced both the Wetlands Act and the town bylaw when this is meant to only be filed under the town bylaw. So the new notification was resent out. Again, there is also the issue that was included relative to the enforcement order issued by the Department of Environmental Protection. This came as a result of the applicant requesting a certificate of compliance for the project under their permit under the Wetlands Act. The issue, though, was that no work should have commenced on the project at all, as at the time the applicant did not have all their necessary permits to do the project or to begin the work. So currently there is no valid order of conditions under the Wetlands Protection Act to do the work. But in this case, DEP did issue an enforcement order stating that they want to see the remaining work, which involves the replication areas, completed. In my opinion, this doesn't really have any relevance to the commission's review of this project under the town bylaw. So that really shouldn't be considered in terms of this hearing for what we're reviewing under the town's bylaw. Based on the project and the town's bylaw, I would recommend that the commission issue the order of conditions under the bylaw with the standard conditions and the added conditions that only standard golf cart type vehicles with soft turf tires be used on this path if the board approves it. Also, that vegetation cut for the purpose of clearing or maintaining the path be removed from the site. And also that there should be a condition stating that the order does not approve the removal or destruction of any plant root systems within the bordering vegetated wetland for the project.
Thank you. Any comments, please? Would you like to respond?
No, I think Dave accurately described the rationale behind the filing and what the objective is of the project.
This project was approved, I believe, in 2011 and then again in 2015 under two separate bylaws that have since been replaced. So we're here now seeking a third approval under the bylaw, which I believe was adopted in 2016 at your town meeting. The 2015 approval right now is under appeal in the Superior Court.
Go around the board, questions? Ms. Hurd. Ms. Taggart. Nothing.
No question.
Joe.
So I guess this is the...
Wow. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak for or against this project? Please come forward and identify yourself.
Good evening, everyone. You may remember my name is Adam Brodsky. I represent Windship LLC. I submitted a letter to the commission via email today. We just found out about this hearing recently. I have official hard copy, which I'm happy to hand to the agent. I have copies for everyone else. I don't know whether this was forwarded to you.
They did get it in the mail.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's what we were looking for.
Right.
I did send it to Mr. Madden. I did not know that council was being involved, so copy there. Difficult to start, but this was a bad project when it was first proposed almost 5 years ago, and it remains a bad project. I'll explain why. But it's made worse by the procedural irregularities which you're faced with this evening. So you have a notice of intent that was filed on May 8th, apparently under the bylaw only. As the agent has said, this project also needs an order of conditions under the Wetlands Protection Act because the final order on the first appeal expired, wasn't extended, and that was recently confirmed by DEP in its revised June enforcement order, which is actually Exhibit E in that letter that you have. As you well know, for any project to go forward, it needs to be approved under the State Act as well as your bylaw. This filing is fatally deficient and should not have been accepted for filing because they have not asked for approval under the State Act. This was not submitted to DEP as required. No wetland fees were paid, state fees paid in connection with this. Regardless, as the agent said, an NOI was filed, but an ANRAD notice was sent to abutters. The hearing should not have been open, but nevertheless, the commission opened the public hearing and continued the hearing to June 21. Under the state wetlands protection statute, you're not authorized to open a hearing if it's not publicly and properly noticed. The applicants did send notice of the NOI to abutters. My client hasn't received a copy yet, but we were made aware of it. As I mentioned, there's no filing under the State Act. The notice of intent references a 2012 plan which shows a wetland line. As you may know, a wetland line is only good for 3 years. So the wetland line shown on this old plan is now stale. Again, another reason why this filing shouldn't have been accepted, and at a bare minimum, the applicant should be required to go out there and to redelineate that line because, as you know, wetlands lines change. We've recommended that the commission not move forward with this filing. We think procedurally it's fatally defective. But if the board is going to, the commission is going to consider the application, I just want to observe the fact that most towns won't even accept a notice of intent if there's an enforcement order in place. You may recall that the applicants, without having any final permits, went through and cut a path illegally. This commission issued an enforcement order, it's attached to Exhibit I, and ultimately DEP issued an enforcement order requiring simply that the applicants replicate the areas that they were supposed to do. But no further work should be allowed. And in fact, this notice of intent shouldn't have been accepted. And by allowing this particular applicant to skirt through all of these procedural irregularities and to ask permission to do more work when it's under 2 existing enforcement orders sets a dangerous precedent and should not be allowed. As I mentioned, fundamentally, they want to cut a path through wetlands. They've already done some of that illegally in violation of the state act as well as your bylaw, so they can drive golf carts through a wetland area without, as the agent said, any consideration for the damage that those golf carts are going to do driving back and forth over wetland vegetation. This is not an instance where the applicant has proposed an elevated boardwalk, bridging of the wetlands, or any materials. Basically, they're going to brush cut and continue to brush cut wetlands and drive golf carts over that. The project was approved in 2011. Ultimately, the project was denied in a Superior Court appeal, and the applicant was successful in going to town meeting twice to essentially do what I consider to be spot zoning. They got a bylaw change to allow this project. Having said that, I'm not questioning the judgment at town meeting. Their project needs to comply with the current bylaw. I should note that, interestingly, the old bylaw, which was repealed when the new bylaw was adopted, is the subject of a pending Superior Court appeal, which we took the position that that pending appeal is moot because the bylaw was repealed and replaced. Interestingly, the applicants take the opposite position. They say that no, if they prevail in that Superior Court appeal, they're able to then have an approval under the local bylaw, which is an inconsistent position here because they're telling you now that they need a new order of conditions under the new bylaw, but they're telling a Superior Court judge that if they are granted an approval under the old bylaw, that they can move forward with the project. Again, the procedural irregularities here are shocking. Under your new bylaw, the applicant, if they want to, in this case, they're cutting 2 different no-activity zones. They have to show that the reduction in the no-activity zone is necessary to accommodate reasonable access. We understand, and we're happy to hear any information to the contrary, we understand that the applicants already have access to the beach on their property by going over Mr. Dekus's property next door. So if they already have an alternate means of access to their beach, they're precluded from getting relief under your local bylaw. Secondly, your bylaw requires that they show the least intrusive means of access. As I suggested, and I think the agent has alluded to, the least intrusive means of access would be to build an elevated walkway over the wetlands rather than allow the cutting of wetlands and the damage of wetlands by driving golf carts through this. I don't see how this commission can grant an approval when there are alternatives that would result in less wetland impact in this instance. Now, I imagine the applicants will say that, well, we want to drive golf carts to the beach, and we may not be able to drive a golf cart over an elevated walkway. I don't know whether that's the case. That's an engineering issue. I'm not an engineer. However, I should remind you that your bylaw doesn't guarantee people the right to drive golf carts to the beach. It allows them reasonable access, which leads me to the next point, which is that, if you're going to allow a path to be cut through wetlands, the least intrusive means is to restrict the use of that path to pedestrian access. Again, you don't have a right to drive golf carts through wetlands. The least intrusive means of getting access to the beach would be, as I said, the use of an elevated boardwalk and a restriction on pedestrian access. And in fact, that's what the commission did on my client's property. My clients, you may recall, had an existing cart path. It was not something that was cut into the wetlands or proposed to be cut into the wetlands. There was an existing cart path in existence for years. They were maintaining the cart path. It was discovered that there were wetlands in that portion of the cart path that were altered as a result of the maintenance of an existing cart path. The commission required my client to file a notice of intent to approve the maintenance work. As a condition of that, this commission restricted the use of that cart path and prohibited motor vehicles over it. So if this board is going to be consistent at all, and if it's going to consider this pathway, it should restrict the use of that pathway to pedestrian use, just as was done next door. And again, the last thing that I want to make clear, and again, obviously I don't have personal knowledge of this, your bylaw actually says that the applicant has to show that there's no alternative means of access. So if in fact they are accessing that beach presently over Mr. Dekus's property, they're not entitled to any relief under the bylaw. And so, as I've suggested, it's an improper filing, it's an incomplete filing, it's irregular and not consistent with the State Wetlands Protection Act or your local bylaw. And on the substance, they don't get close to meeting your requirements for the grant of an approval under the local bylaw. Thank you. I'm also happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from the board?
Kind of a lot to digest.
Yes, a lot to digest.
The alternative method of access over someone else's property, correct me if I'm wrong, but seems to be temporary, or could be temporary. I don't know, but is this path on their property, and if created, their access will no longer be limited to someone else's permission?
I can't answer any of those questions. I'm told that they have accessed the beach over Mr. Dekus's property, whether they're doing it via a perpetual easement, whether they do it via a license that can be terminated by Mr. Dekus. I don't know any of the specifics. Those are questions that should be put to the applicant, not to an interested abutter.
I can't. It's.
Wait. No, I just,
Mr. Dekus, I believe, is here, but it's a permitted use. It's just basically a gentleman's agreement that he can use the property. There's no legal right to access the shoreline over the Dekus property, and it can be that permission can be extinguished at any moment. And if the property is sold or transferred to another party, all of a sudden that access goes away.
it's my understanding that piece of property is under conservation restriction. Is that correct, Mr. Dekus?
Just recently, the deal that I worked out with the
Buzzards Bay, yeah. So that land is owned by Mr. Dekus, but there is a conservation restriction on it, and it's my understanding there is limited access to that land with a prior notification of Mr. Dekus before they go on to that land, if I understand that CR correctly.
That's correct.
So it is not constant access across it to get to it. It is limited only upon prior approval by the landowner.
I'm not familiar with the conservation restriction. Many conservation restrictions actually do allow access as one of the reserve rights.
Then
but I have
please
no
take a
personal-
look at that conservation restriction. It's a very limited access with prior approval, if I've read it correctly, and I thought I had.
And again, I'm not here to argue the point. I'm just
No,
telling
I'm
you
just-
that as a fact, people have been accessing the beach over Mr. Dekus's property. Whether Mr. Dekus wants to continue to allow it, whether that use has been, is allowed under the CR, whether, permission has been requested of the holder of the CR, those are factual issues that this board has to consider. It's not my burden of proof to show to this commission that the applicants are entitled to such relief. I'm just saying the fact on the ground, there's presently alternative access.
Does that answer your question?
Sort of.
Sort of.
Sandy?
I know nothing of the conservation restriction, but you did mention that there was needed prior, is that prior access per use, prior permission per use? And if that were true, then, if you go home to grab another sandwich, you need to get permission to come back. But I see your point, but I don't know enough about this. I don't think anyone can answer my question right now, is actually, but you did create a few more. Thank you.
And I think those are all legitimate questions
Right.
that should be answered before this commission decides what to do in this matter.
Ms. Hurd, you had a question?
So from what I understand, it's not,
To the mic.
from what I understand, it's not a deeded easement over Mr. Deacon's land. Am I correct?
Just a good neighbor policy.
Right. And how long has that, that was my question. How long has that policy been in effect?
It was intended at the beginning for a short period of time until they get their final project approved. But it's not-
Mr. Deacons, could
So-
you come up to the mic so that we could be, so we can get your responses on tape? Correct, Mr. White? Thank you.
So I guess my question is, a short period of time, does that mean that that had been, that gentleman's agreement had been done, say, 5 or 7 years ago, 2011, saying they're going to get this going, and, well, in the meantime, you can cross over here?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's sort of how it was?
I just was trying to help out some neighbors and some friends, but I had no idea that it was gonna turn into this kind of a Donnybrook, and I hate, quite frankly, to be in the middle of it. And I don't intend to stay in the middle of it if it's gonna cause these kinds of complications. And I didn't think this thing was gonna drag out that long, and I will hang in there for a little bit longer. But believe me, it's temporary, it's year to year, it'll be reviewed year to year with me and with the coalition, who now are the overseers of the CR.
Anything else for Mr. Deacons? Thank you.
Certainly no deed involved, no deeded rights.
Did you want to respond to anything? I'm looking at, Mike, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There was Mike, isn't it?
Yes.
I was looking, you wanted to
Oh, okay.
respond.
Well, I think he made clear there's no legal right to access the shoreline. And I think there are a lot of red herrings that have been thrown out tonight. You're talking about DEP approvals and other issues, but we're really only here to, under a notice of intent, under this bylaw. I think there are a lot of other issues that have been lost, and I'll address those in a minute, but I think we have somebody else who wants to.
Yes. Identify yourself.
Hi, Peter Balzerini, one of the trustees to the 18 Bridges Point Realty Trust. I just think that this issue of access through Mr. Deacon's property is an issue that's clouding the waters here, because that has absolutely nothing to do with us applying for a notice of intent to use our property. We don't have any written agreement with Mr. Deacons, and I just think that was just thrown in to, again, muddy the water. That is completely irrelevant to our application for a notice of intent. Whether he allows us or not, that could change at any minute. And I think we should consider this. This project's been approved over and over again. We've been here for 5 years, and as eloquent as Mr. Brodsky is with his speech, a great deal of what he said is quite questionable. And, rather than go all through that stuff, we'll let the folks who are here for our issue discuss the pertinent points to the notice of intent. But I just want to make a comment here. A great deal of what was just said has already been said and proven to be incorrect. So you got to take these things with a grain of salt. I mean, I understand he's trying to prove his point, but the thing about they're not being able to use golf carts and we were allowed, there's a very simple explanation for that. When they applied, because they put their path in without any prior approval, when they came back here to get approval, they simply never asked the commission to use golf carts, and so therefore it was never granted. It wasn't a situation where we were given permission to use golf carts and they weren't. We asked for it because we went through all the procedures before we started doing anything. They simply never asked for that right, and if they want to do that, they can come back and ask, but they don't, because they don't want to open the whole bottle of, can of worms up again with their project because of all the things that were done illegally when they did theirs. So we'll just leave it at that and let the
Thank you.
professionals take over.
If I recall, the request was to expand a path that existed for a
Which
long
was-
time. that existed for a long time, so it could be used by a cart pulled by a horse.
Well, that
That
whole
was
thing-
what I remember coming before us, asking
don't
for...
need to relitigate
No,
that whole
I'm
thing,
just
but-
saying, that's what I recall from Mr. Clemmy's request, was to have that path widen so it could be used for a cart to draw his grandchildren with a horse.
Well,
And
the whole
that's
thing
why it
about
was...
the pre-existing historical
Yeah.
path is a fallacy, but we don't
No,
need to
I'm
litigate
sorry.
that.
I did see the path. I knew it
Oh, yeah, 'cause
existed,
built
but
it,
they...
yeah.
wa-
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I saw an old picture that showed the path, not as wide as it is now, granted, but it existed. Thank
Yeah, in the
you.
end, by the beach, yes, it did. It did.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Madam Chairman, if I explain the relevance of the access issue. So on either end of this property are no activity zones. And under your bylaw, you're not allowed to have any activities in those zones. It's prohibited under your bylaw. In order to do this project, the applicant needs a waiver of that requirement. And the waiver is governed by section 17C, which are the exceptions that define what you can do to get a waiver in order to do work in a no-activity zone. And the relevant provision is D, and I'm just going to read it to you because this is exactly what the applicant has to prove. The Conservation Commission may waive or reduce the no-activity zone requirements listed above 4, and I'm going to jump down to D, if in its judgment such a reduction is necessary to accommodate reasonable access by path or other least intrusive means of access to other portions of a property or the shoreline, as long as there is no other alternative means of accessing the other portions of the property, and that such alteration does not exceed a 5-foot naturally surfaced path or an elevated boardwalk not to exceed 3 feet in width within the 5-foot path, such alterations may require wetland replication. Right in your bylaw, which they have to meet, is not only a requirement that there be no other alternative means of access, but that it's necessary to accommodate a reasonable access, and as I mentioned, through the least intrusive means of access. This is entirely relevant and is exactly what you're being asked to decide upon. And I respectfully suggest that Mr. Bellisarini may not understand what they need to prove in order to get a waiver to do an activity that is prohibited under your bylaw. And I need to make sure,
Okay.
what they're proposing is prohibited. They're only entitled to do this if you're going to grant them a waiver, a variance. And as you likely know, I mean, waivers and variances are not often granted, at least in my experience, by conservation commissions, because your mission is to protect wetlands, not to allow the alteration of them. If there are alternatives and other ways of doing it, that would minimize that impact. And as I mentioned, I just don't see how they can meet their burden of proof here.
Thank you.
I think what's lost, and I think this is another issue, maybe to just cloud the waters here. The waiver applies, in this case, and I don't need to read it over again, but it applies to access from the applicant's property to the shoreline. The fact that he might be able to walk down the street and walk across somebody else's yard to get to another portion of the shoreline is completely irrelevant. We're here under the bylaw seeking access from their property directly to the shoreline. We don't think that...
Understand.
And again, I mean, I think it's very clear now on the record that the permission to use somebody else's property to get to another part of the shoreline, it might expire soon.
I should know that doesn't say that in your bylaw. I read you exactly.
Thank
It doesn't say it's access over your own property. If there's any other means of access to access another portion of your property, that's the requirement.
Thank you. Bill? Mr. Madden, you have something?
Well, I just think that the access issue seems to have been resolved to some degree according to Mr. Deacus. And in the applicant, we know that the access is not anything more than a gentleman's agreement that in the interim until this project is approved. But I think that the issue that we're talking about is what the best way to achieve that access is, and it's just very conclusory in nature that the least intrusive means has automatically been determined to be an elevated walkway but yet no discussion has taken place as to what is required to build an elevated walkway and what the long-term ramifications an elevated walkway would have on the wetlands or the surrounding wetlands, due to shading, due to the construction of it, things of that nature. I mean, one thing that was omitted is that the mitigation for the pathway through the wetlands is a wetland replication area. And that was precisely what DEP ordered us to do, is construct that wetlands replication area. So I'm thinking that, you know, really, the pathway, the way it is designed, is the least intrusive way of doing it. Does have the least amount of long-term impact. We know exactly what the footprint is. We know exactly how it would be utilized over time. And I think we can predict with a reasonable degree of certainty as to what the outcome of that path would be due to the seasonal, pretty much the seasonal nature and use of the path. We're not cutting the root system out of the vegetation below it. We're maintaining that structure. We're not removing that material. We're not replacing it with something else. We are maintaining a natural surface on the ground. There's no bark mulch provided. There's nothing other than the vegetation, the root system that is there. So I think that, you know, we have not exceeded, in the bylaw, we have not exceeded a 5-foot naturally surfaced path. That's what we're asking for. That's what's shown in the plan. That's what's being proposed. An elevated walkway certainly is not considered a naturally surfaced path. You know, what is the material that elevated walkway could be constructed out of? So I think when we look at the reasonableness of the access for the intended use, for the duration of the use, that the footpath or the cart path as proposed certainly meets the standard of the bylaw.
If I might make just 2 points. One, we don't know where the wetlands are today because the wetland line is stale. So if there's a larger area of wetlands now, then the replication calculations that were made in 2011 and 2012 would not be appropriate mitigation. So as I mentioned, you need to update the wetlands line and provide current data forms to do that. But second, it's not the abutter's burden of proof to show what's reasonable under the circumstances. If the applicant says or believes that an elevated walkway would have more impact than what they're proposing, then they need to come forward with evidence to show that. What can be designed there? How many posts would it be? What would be the shading impact? What would be the actual alteration to the wetlands associated with the posts? That's all of the applicant's burden of proof. It's not our job to design a project in conformance with your bylaw standard. So again, if there's going to be a principled review, and that's the position that the applicant has to take, then they have to come forward and prove that. Then the commission, in its judgment, can make a decision.
Thank you. Mr. Bichette, this wetland delineation that's over 3 years old, is it something that you need to remark? Because I've not come across this before.
Right. Well, a couple of things. We, first of all, wouldn't be doing the marking. You know, somebody else would do that and we would review it. But in this case, I don't believe the wetland line needs to be reflagged. The wetland line is currently still on a plan that's the subject of a current appeal. So that plan and that application are still in process. So in my opinion, that wetland line still is valid as it is. So, you know, the commission can consider that, but in my view, the wetland line is still accurate as depicted.
So
I would agree if we were simply litigating the appeal in Superior Court. You have a brand-new filing. So the applicant has elected not to pursue its remedies and fight the battle in Superior Court. They've come to you with a new bylaw filing, which has to comply with your requirements, and I'd suggest has to comply with the State Act, which makes it perfectly clear that if the wetland line that was previously authorized is no longer valid and is more than 3 years old, it's got to be redelineated. So again, if you're going to cut the applicant yet another break, I'd respectfully suggest that the agent is entirely wrong on that point.
Just one other point on the elevated walkway. The vast majority of that area is in a velocity zone, and there are pretty significant restrictions on what you can do in a velocity zone. In fact, FEMA has some documentation on obstructions in V zones, and I would maintain that a structure such as an elevated walkway may have some limitations for construction. So again, by my testimony tonight, I think it really starts to point to that the most reasonable method of access to the waterfront in the velocity zone through the land that we're talking about is a mode path.
Thank you.
And just to further comment that, I mean, just kind of like a common sense approach to this as far as, well, they should prove that a boardwalk would be less intrusive. I mean, the construction of a boardwalk through a resource area would require a construction crew. There would have to be footings, sonotubes, gas augers. I mean, there would be a tremendous disruption to the resource area, as opposed to what we're proposing, which is basically just clearing a path out so that we can run some golf carts over this path. And again, I know this is the prior hearing, but I mean, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is create some access for the mothers of the trustees, both handicapped, 91 and 92 years old. And I just wanted one other point be on the access issue, and I don't want to beat that issue to death, but the argument about, well, you can use a neighbor's property, it's beyond this bylaw. This bylaw is access from your property to the shoreline. If you take it one step further, their argument, I guess you could say, well, they could drive a car to Onset Beach, walk down to the shoreline, and walk all the way back to the shoreline that they're seeking to get to in the first place. It's not applicable here. We're looking for access from their property to the shoreline.
Madam Chair, if I might, because I think we need a little bit of reality here. A small elevated boardwalk, I have permitted in velocity zones. They're not structures subject to the state building code or FEMA requirements. They are located within lands subject to coastal storm flowage, which is within your jurisdiction. But there are no performance standards for that. These walkways are typically hand dug using small pilings. These are pedestrian walkways typically done. We're not talking about a major construction project to suggest that that is going to result in greater impacts than, literally driving repeatedly over and through wetlands with brush cutters and golf carts. Again, is up to the commission's judgment, but let's look at a design. Let's have some principled examination of that. Not some scare story that somehow we're going to have construction machinery digging a pile support structure in what's essentially, it's a coastal zone, but it's more like an inland BBW system.
Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak for or against this project? Yes, Mr. Madden.
I just want to make one final comment, and it's maybe just dissecting the way the sentences are written in the bylaw, and it says, if in its judgment a reduction is necessary to accommodate reasonable access, then it has a comma, it says by path, comma, or other least intrusive means of access.
Okay.
So I think it's an option.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'm seeing none. I just want to, Mr. Bichette, could you one more time list the items other than the order of conditions, our standard order of conditions, the items you would like us to include in the order of conditions? I wrote them down. I just want them one more time.
Sure. Again, if it's in the commission's view to grant this, then I would suggest that only golf cart type vehicles with the soft turf tires be used. In other words, no car type tires. That vegetation cut for the purpose of clearing or maintaining the path be removed from the site. So in other words, it's not just discarded on the site or in the wetlands. And also that there be a condition that there not be any removal or destruction of any plant root systems within the wetland.
And the 30-foot no work zone variance, was that included?
That's part of the application submittal, so yes.
Okay.
And natural surfaces that remain on the path.
Right.
I see no other applicant, no other comment on this particular project. I'll take a motion from the board.
Motion to close?
I have a motion to close the hearing. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The motion is carried and the hearing is closed. Next, please.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to make a motion to issue with the standard conditions, plus with the added conditions of only standard golf cart be used with soft tires or non-aggressive tires. Removal of any brush as far as maintenance goes and stuff like that should be removed from the area immediately. And no removal of the root system at all, and natural surface shall remain on the path.
I have that motion.
Second.
I have a second from Bill. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
What's your number? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
1, 2, 3, 4. 5.
5,
5, 0, 1. 5, 0, 0.
okay.
Please see Mr. Bichette.
Thanks very much for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I didn't want you to.
If it isn't, it won't be.
Mentioned at the end here, 92 and 95-year-old.
I'm just having the last thing on the, I'm the last thing on the agenda. Thanks, okay, good meeting.
Was this approved? He recommended
Next, please.
that the golf carts and remove brush, in other words, other conditions.
We have one more hearing.
Yeah.
And I,
And we approved this before.
No, you got one
It's
continued.
all technical.
We have one more hearing.
Yeah,
Fort Fairfield.
Yeah, now, yeah, it's continued here.
It's a new file.
it's continued here.
She doesn't have to read it.
Standard.
Oh, it's
I'm back.
continued. Okay.
Good job.
Your job.
The order of conditions.
I didn't,
Okay.
that's one I didn't make it down.
Continued NOI for Fort Fairfield BP LLC, Novonix LLC, care of JAF Engineering.
Okay, we're going to request a continuance of the hearing until July 5th, but I just wanted to give you a brief update. I think that at the last meeting, David requested that we try to reduce the activity in the 50-foot no activity zone for a commercial site because we were tying in our emergency access road to the bog road. We've done that on the plan, you know, I'll submit that on the 5th. We've kind of reduced it to the degree that we could, but, you know, it's in there to some degree, but I would say we've done a good job in reducing it. The other thing is that Charlie Rowley has reviewed the plans, and I have a copy of a letter that he sent to my office. I just
We actually.
What's the date of, what's the date of that?
Get it.
you did get it?
What's the date of it?
21st of June. to
We
date.
have it in our packet.
Okay.
Thank you.
So he's in pretty good shape with what we're proposing right now, and we're just working with the easement agreement between Makepeace Navionics and what have for access through the site. So I just want to give you the brief update on that. And I'm thinking that we're expecting the public hearing to be closed on Monday, the 26th, so, with the planning board, that is. So we think that we should be in fairly good shape and have all of your questions answered by the 5th of July. I've advised the client that it might be wise to keep this hearing open, not to request it to be closed, in the event the planning board raise something that we're not aware of on Monday night.
Okay, I make a motion, we continue the hearing until July 5.
Second?
Sandy's motion,
Second?
seconded by Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay. Extension request, Michael Connors, 13 Salt Creek Road. David?
This project was for the construction of a pier. The order of conditions is due to expire next month, and they have not quite finished with the project, so they're requesting a one-year extension. I would recommend the issuance of the one-year extension to allow them to complete the work under the
So
existing
moved.
order.
Second.
Uh, Joe's motion, Sandy's second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions?
You know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Certificate of compliance for Kevin Riley, 1 Michael Drive.
That project was for a septic system upgrade. It has been completed, so I would recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance.
So moved.
Second?
Sandy's motion, Joe's second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you.
Let me give you this to sign.
And David has something he wants to bring up on the CR for Brady property.
Well, we still have one more.
What?
Stanford?
That's, you said hold it, right?
Yeah, but I just wanted to let the commission
know.
understand what that is.
I
So we
would
had a
guess there
request for a
is.
certificate of
Scarce.
compliance for the solar field off of
That's-
Beaver
that's
Creek
blonde behind that
Road.
screen
And in my opinion, there's still some things that need to be completed, so I'm not recommending that be granted tonight, so I just wanted to give you an update on that. So I'm supposed to meet with them next week to go over some things to complete, and we'll bring it back at a future meeting.
Okay. Okay. Now you can talk about your CR.
In your mail, we had a request from the Buzzards Bay Coalition asking the commission if they would hold a conservation restriction on a piece of conservation land they are looking to purchase. So they would need a letter of support from the commission on that. Sandy had mentioned she might prefer to have them come in and discuss this directly with the board, so if that's what the board prefers before voting on it, then we can set that up for the next meeting.
Wishes?
Good idea.
General consensus?
Did you have a?
That's what we've done in the past, right?
Huh?
We have had them come in the past. They, at times, have requested to come in, and then other times, they've just sent us letters asking us to take an action, so,
Does the CR exist yet?
no. Well, the CR is
Pretty
being
much.
draft form, but it's not existing at this point. This
Is there-
Just looking for a letter?
The coalition is applying for a grant for funds to purchase the property, and as part of the grant application, they need to submit something stating that there is a willing holder of the conservation restriction. So that's why they're asking for this.
They're basically just asking for permission right now.
Is it up to us, or is it up to the selectmen that that the town hold the CR?
Well, both ultimately have to vote to
Approve it.
approve it.
But can we say we would support, that we would be a holder of the CR without the selectmen's input?
Well, that, I guess, is a question for them and you folks. I mean, we've voted in the past to hold CRs, but if you want to run that by the selectmen first, then that's fine as well. There's no specific protocol on that.
There isn't.
Wasn't that a joint CR holder type of agreements that we entered into before? It was always
Yeah,
with
there are
another
other
one.
properties where there's multiple holders of the CRs.
The only primary one we have is one that we basically, it is town property, I believe. Right with, no, that's actually Buzzards Bay.
Right, we wouldn't hold a CR on our own property, so, but again, we have situations where we're the lone holder of a CR, and then we have situations where we're joint holders of a CR with other entities.
Please invite Brendan to our next meeting, please? Or someone from the Buzzards Bay Coalition?
It's fine with me. Seems to be the general consensus of the whole board.
Sure.
Very good.
There you got your answer.
All right.
Except for the land along on Great Neck. I mean, yes, but you have,
I just looked when I was in there, I said, oh, shucks.
where's Arlington, there's Arlington Street. Yep,
We're in good shape.
Catabrigas. Yep.
We got everything done.
Brady's is over here.
Brady's is this one right here.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion,
I
because
need
we're
a
done with our
motion
business.
Close the hearing, close the meeting at,
Wait a minute.
I just have a question. This Bay Trust, the waterways license, where they were talking about the pier that we approved, but according to this letter, they say that,
you need to go to the microphone, please.
sorry. The Bay Trust letter, are we supposed to look at this and make some comment on it about the moorings over in, it's actually again,
But that's what Terry Edwards.
Winship Ave?
This letter was sent as a comment letter because the owner is submitting his application for a Chapter 91 license, and there's a comment period on that. And so this letter is sent to DEP as part of a comment on their review of his application for a Chapter 91 license. So this isn't something we need to respond to. This is something DEP now is going to review and determine if it's a valid issue or not.
Interesting.
I make a motion, we adjourn at 8:50
Second.
in 30 seconds.
Aye.
Sandy's motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Wrap it up.